So we covered the synchronous generator analytical equations and solved the sample problems. And the
So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a doubt regarding in tutorial one part. In question number 4, well, final part.
Let me see.
Yes, sir. On that poll is not given, sir. On that
Yes,
question.
sir.
Question number 4, final part.
Sir, frequency also not given.
So power we can calculate, but for torque calculation, I think frequency as well as poles should be given. But let me clear, sir, if this is sufficient or any other data is required, sir.
No, it seems that something is missing here. So, okay, I'll look at this again. Seems to be missing.
Sir, I have.
Yeah, so I'll update this after this class.
Okay,
I had
sure.
assumed it to be 4 and did the question.
Okay, no problem. So even if you have done, you can edit it if there's some thing needed, or it's okay if you've already done. Then those who have done, that's okay. But for others, I will look into it. I think yeah, there is something missing here. At least frequency or poles, those two should be mentioned. So yeah, okay, I will look at this and then update this in Teams today.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's move ahead and we will discuss. We'll move to the next section of this course. So far we have been discussing. If you see, we have been discussing mainly about the fundamental principles governing the behavior of synchronous generators and the analytical equations and its operation and all. So now we will go into somewhat more details of hydro generators in terms of their construction, in terms of more of the practical aspects. So far whatever we discussed was like the conceptual part, which forms the theory behind the entire study of synchronous generators. And now we'll be moving more towards the practical applications and look at some of the practical considerations in actual hydro generators. So we will start with this one today, types and details of hydro generators. So if we talk about the types of hydro generators, typically, broadly speaking, from an application point of view, all these are synchronous generators, by the way. We are mainly looking at the construction features of the generator. So looking at the construction aspect of how the generator is designed and what is the shape of its rotor and all. Based on those things, there are 3 types, primarily speaking. And these 3 types are basically distinguished by the design speed. So as we discussed, and you might recall that hydro generators, they have their operating speed usually in the range of 80 RPM to 1000 RPM, roughly in that zone. So based on the speed in which the generator can operate, there are 3 broad categories which have been identified. And accordingly, the bearing arrangement for keeping the shaft in place, that varies. So the first one is known as the umbrella type generator, and it is used for low speed, that is 80 to 200 RPM. So this is the design of a umbrella type generator. So in this, this is a cross-sectional view. So it will be basically overall it will be having a cylindrical profile, and we are cutting a cross section and looking at this thing, what it looks like. So in this, the central part here is the shaft. So as all of you might already be aware that these hydro generators are always having a vertical alignment. So the turbine is below and then generator is on top of that, and it's in one vertical column sort of, so to say. So this below this is the coupling, this shaft here, this will couple to the turbine, and below this will be the turbine, which is not shown here because that is not our area of study here. And this is the generator which sits on top of the turbine, so to say. And this is the shaft in between, and this is the rotor here, the cross section of the rotor. So the rotor is rotating in the horizontal plane here. So in the horizontal plane, it will be rotating like this. And this, as you can see, are the stator core. So this again will be a entirely a cylindrical thing along the inner periphery of that cylinder. That cylindrical core will be there. And now, why the name here is umbrella type, and the thing why it can be used for low speed is because of the location of these bearings. So as we can understand now, this entire shaft and the rotor will be rotating at some particular speed. So as we know, there is something known as the centrifugal force, right? So that centrifugal force will be produced, and this will tend to thrust the generator upward. The rotor shaft will tend to thrust upward because the force is being applied from down, and the rotational torque is coming from the turbine here. So there will be a thrust which this will experience. So you need to make sure that this is structurally stable and that thrust is accounted for. So for keeping this shaft and rotor arrangement in place, we put something known as the thrust and guide bearing. So this thrust and guide bearing in this type of generator is placed in the bottom part towards the turbine. So this type of arrangement, this placing the bottom mounted thrust and guide bearing, this is actually done because it is more, you can say, cost effective, less expensive. But the only thing here is that this will not provide a very good, you can say, not a very high amount of control on this thrust which this rotor experiences. And that is the reason why it can be used only for low speed generators, because as we can understand, in low speed generator, the amount of that centrifugal force produced would be lesser. So that's why it says here it has a combined bottom thrust and guide bearing, and due to its low operating speed does not require a top guide bearing. So there is no top guide bearing, only the bottom bearing is there, and which is also not that bulky in size. It's smaller actually. And the elimination of the top guide bearing makes this the least expensive generator design. So there is no top guide bearing, so that's why it becomes least expensive. It's a very simple one, just having a guide bearing at the bottom. And why is the name umbrella? Why we are calling it as the umbrella type? Can someone say?
Sir, because it's
due to its shape.
Right. So as you can look at this cross section here, this looks like an umbrella, similar to an umbrella. So the two these arms of the rotor, they are having a slanting thing, and then in between there is the shaft. So this cross section, visibly it looks like an umbrella. That is the reason for umbrella type generator.
Sir, it is also similar to the Porter Governor.
Yeah, right. Similar, but it is very different actually. Governor is entirely different. I think we'll go to Governor.
No, sir. Actually, only the shape wise.
Shape wise. But in that Governor, those two arms will go up and down, right? Depending upon
yes, sir. As the speed increases, increases, and yes. Sir.
Right, but this is fixed. This is not moving. I mean, these arms are fixed at this angle. They are not flexible. Okay. They are rigid. Yeah.
Only the shaft is moving.
Yeah, there is only this rotational motion of the shaft in the horizontal plane.
Okay, sir.
So this thing is entirely fixed. There is no movement here. This arms are completely fixed. We'll look at this in. If possible, I'll play a video for your better understanding of this. First, let me cover this thing.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so this is the simplest one, least expensive, and known as the umbrella type generator. Can be used for small RPM, 80 to 200 RPM generators. Then we go to the next one, which is semi-umbrella type generator, and this is used for medium speed generators, which is categorized from somewhere from 130 to 250 RPM. As you can see, there is overlap here. This is 80 to 200, this is 130 to 250. So in that zone, between 130 to 200 RPM, either of these can be adopted. So umbrella type is less expensive. That is the only thing. This will be slightly more expensive, but yeah, one can go for one of these in that intersection zone. So it has, what is the difference here? That it has a combined bottom thrust and guide bearing and a top guide bearing. But the top guide bearing is supported by a light bracket. The top guide bearing is, so there is a smaller, top guide bearing is there, but it is not that big as the last category, which we'll look at later. So it is relatively smaller as compared to a standard generator. And that's why the bracket which is needed at the top to support that guide bearing, that is also a light one. This bracket and bearing arrangement makes the semi-umbrella design more expensive than the umbrella design. So that is obvious because there will be more capital investment in this upper part of the generator in terms of another guide bearing and that light bracket for supporting it. So it will be slightly more expensive, but as we can see, it can support somewhat higher speeds. So this is the cross-sectional view of this particular semi-umbrella type generator. So as you can see here, now these rotor arms are there like completely horizontal. That umbrella type cross section has gone away. But still the name semi-umbrella is there because the top guide bearing is a smaller one. As you can see, the bottom bearing, the bottom mounted thrust and guide bearing, that is still larger inside. The top guide bearing is smaller one. And there is a light support bracket for putting that bearing. So now what will be there is that as this thrust will be experienced, so the bottom guide bearing will hold it from below and the top bearing will also press it down from above. So it will be more stable, possibly going for certain amount higher speeds. Okay,
sir,
and
I have a doubt.
Who is that? Souvik?
Yes,
yeah.
Sir. Sir, bracket is for holding the shaft, the generator.
Right. Right.
And gearing is to reduce the friction. Is it so? Bearing.
We'll come to the bearing in more detail. Friction is also there, but the thrust bearing especially, it has a function to keep this thing in place.
Okay, sir.
So keeping the shaft in place and not allowing it to have this type of disruption, that is one of the primary functions of this. We'll come to the bearing in detail later.
Okay, sir.
And this also reminds me, I mean, there was some incident a few years back in here only. I mean, those who, I mean, may not be aware because this was not so much in the media, but last year only there was one incident in one hydropower plant in Haridwar only, that Chila power plant, very famous power plant we have here. And the thing was that I mean, the cause is still not known, but I mean, maybe they are investigating or there is something which they have found, but it's not in the public domain. But the idea was that what happened that this guide or thrust bearing was probably weakened or whatever the reason. The idea was that this thrust which the machine experienced, that was the guide bearing was not able to hold it, and actually, that machine got sort of uprooted. You can say, it went up outside its encasing, and there was an accident and some casualty. So this is a very critical thing actually. In an operational aspect of a hydro generator, there will be a very significant thrust which this generator will experience. So these two guide bearings which we place at the bottom and the top, they have this critical function of keeping it in place. Okay, so then we go to the third one, which is known as the standard type generator. And this, as we can understand, is the most robust one and therefore can be used for much higher speeds. And if you see, the range here is quite big, right, from 170 RPM to up to the maximum limit for hydro generators up to 1000 RPM. So as it says here, it was the standard generator design prior to the introduction of the umbrella and semi-umbrella generator designs in the late 1930s. So that's why the name standard, because this was already the standard. But then people in 1930s or so, they started trying to economize on the design of the generator. And they thought that when the generator is operating at a lesser speed, then we actually don't need that type of heavy guide bearing type structure. And that's why they came up with these new semi-umbrella and umbrella type generators at a later date. So what is here is that this design is a top mounted thrust and guide bearing supported on a heavy bracket, which must be capable of supporting the total weight of the generator without distortion during unit operation. This is the most expensive generator design and consequently is only used for high-speed generators, which have small rotor diameters and inadequate space below the generator to accommodate a combined thrust and guide bearing. So that is the idea. It is the most expensive one because of this top-mounted heavy bracket and guide bearing type of arrangement. And interestingly here, the advantage is that this can be used when this rotor is having a smaller diameter. So in that case, this becomes handy. And this is what this looks like. So as you can see here, there is a small maybe bottom guide bearing, but the entire thing, the major task of the thrust and guide bearing is at the top mounting point, and that's why there is a heavy support bracket at the top, and that becomes more effective also. So if you have a top mounted heavy thrust and guide bearing, that keeps the rotor in its place and doesn't allow that thrust to do any distortion in the operation. So this is if you once we look at the relative thing, so if you see here, this was the umbrella type, just having bottom mounted thrust and guide bearing, nothing on top, no guide bearing on top. Semi umbrella, the bottom mounted one was still the most prominent one. The top guide bearing is a smaller arrangement, whereas here, as you can see, the top mounted thrust and guide bearing is the main bearing, guide bearing and thrust bearing for keeping it in place, and there's a smaller bottom guide bearing.
Sir,
So, yeah.
sir, what's the problem with using small rotor diameter in above cases, and umbrella and semi-umbrellas?
Okay, so smaller rotor diameters. We'll have to actually, I'll have to look at that thing, but it apparently appears here that this will probably have a more intense, because that force distribution doesn't occur over a larger diameter. So probably the thrust which it experiences along the shaft seems to be higher, but I'll have to confirm that one. That is like the impression which I'm getting from reading this, but I'll confirm this.
Okay, sir.
Okay, anyone else?
No, sir.
Okay. So now let's look at once at a cross section of this in more detail of these generator components, specifically the standard type high-speed generator. So this is sort of a cross-sectional diagram of the standard type generator in more detail, showing all the parts numbered here with this figure. So first one is the stator foundation support members embedded in concrete. So these ones here, these are the stator foundation support members. So that's obvious. There will be some concrete or subtype structure here where this will be embedded to provide it the structural stability. Then second is the stator frame. So these elements, these hashed elements, as you can see, that is the stator frame, which will hold the stator core. And third one is the stator core. So this one. So this goes across the periphery, as you can visualize. This will be across the entire inner diameter of that cylindrical structure. And this stator core is going along the stator frame, encased in the stator frame. Fourth one is the stator winding. So this is just shown here for demonstration purpose like this. This winding will be embedded in the stator core. So in the stator core there will be slots, and in those slots your winding will be placed. Then fifth is the shaft. So this is the shaft, as we said earlier. Then sixth one is the rotor, sometimes also known as the name spider. So this thing, as we said, this is a cylindrical thing which is rotating like that, and it's shown here. Seventh is the rotor rim at the farther end of the rotor, away from the shaft. Eighth is the rotor poles. So the poles are mounted here, and as we have discussed earlier also, these are the salient type poles for hydro generator. So they are mounted here, and there is a very small air gap between the stator and the rotor. Then ninth one is the upper guide bearing. So this is because a standard type generator, so the guide bearing is at the top here. 10th is the thrust bearing. So guide bearing and the thrust bearing, they are here. We'll look at this, the details of this later actually. And 11 is thrust bearing collar here. 12th is the thrust bearing cooler, because there will be some heat dissipation in this. So this type of cooling arrangement is provided here. Then 13 is the lower guide bearing. So this one here, as we discussed, in a standard type generator, there will be a smaller arrangement at the bottom. So this is the bottom guide bearing. 14 is the bearing brackets, upper and lower. So this 14 here for the upper guide bearing. And this one is for the bottom guide bearing. So that is 14. Then 15 is the brake pad here. So sometimes, usually this is not used that way, but mostly in emergency situations or when the speed is very low, then mechanical braking is applied if you want to stop the machine. So the primary braking is done through electrical braking or dynamic braking, and then secondary braking is through this mechanical brake type arrangement is also provided. Then 16 is the brake ring, which along with the brake pad is used for braking the machine, the motion of the machine. Then 17 is the ventilation fans. So this is here, the ventilation fans provided for cooling the rotor winding. Then 18 is the air heat exchangers. So these are, so as someone was pointing out about the cooling thing. So as you can see, this cooling arrangement is always provided, not just for the rotor and the stator winding, but also for the guide bearings. So despite that, despite all these cooling arrangements and all, still this heating of the winding still remains the most critical aspect for the power output of the machine. So 18 is this one for cooling the stator winding. 19 is the, so this is a slip ring type generator which was used earlier. Now no bigger system will have this type of a thing. It will usually have an exciter here. So instead of the slip ring, there will be an exciter, and we'll look at that also in the video here. So here there is a slip ring, but either way, instead of a slip ring, it can be an exciter here. So the idea is that the DC power supply can be fed from top. So that is 19. Then 20 is the housing. So this is the entire housing of this entire system. 21 is maintenance walkway area. So usually what you'll see, I mean, maybe I'll show it through the video, is that on top of it, there will be some walkway for doing maintenance or repair type of works. 22 is the bearing housing. So that is where the upper, so 22 here for the upper guide bearing and thrust bearing, and this same 22 here for the lower guide bearing. And 23 is the bolted connections to the turbine shaft. So this is where the generator shaft gets bolted to the turbine shaft, and the turbine is below this. Okay, any questions on this?
Sir, this is the side view, right?
Yeah, the cross-sectional view.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, so now I will just watch a video so that this becomes more clear. Let me start the thing. So I hope you're able to see, and just let me know if you're able to hear the sound of the video.
In this animation, how a hydro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're able to hear the sound.
Good, good. So we'll just watch this small 4-minute video.
Generator works. This is a typical New Zealand hydro station. You can see that the station has a dam, which creates a drop from one water level down to another. From outside the station, we can't see the generators. If we approach though, we can see the power lines or conductors that carry the electricity from the station to the national grid. Each power conductor connects to a turbine-powered generator inside the dam itself. Let's go inside the dam now and look at one hydro generator to see how the power is produced. The water from above the dam flows down through pipes called penstocks. Each penstock has its own headgate at the top to stop water flow for maintenance or during an emergency. At the end of the penstock is the scroll case. This curls around the turbine like a snail shell. It's designed to create a consistent pressure of water entering the turbine from all sides. Inside the scroll case is a set of vanes called the wicket gates. These control how water flows into the turbine. The wicket gates are controlled by an external governor system. This opens and closes them in response to conditions on the national grid. A high load on the system slows the turbine. the governor system reacts by opening the gates further to speed it back up. Conversely, it will narrow the wicket gates in response to low load on the system. Beyond the wicket gates, we can see the turbine blades. The blades are shaped to extract the most possible spin from the moving water. The turbine blades and the shaft connecting them to the generator are called the runner. We will expand this into its parts so we can see them clearly. At the top is the exciter, which gets a small DC power supply from a cable attached to an external controller called the Automatic Voltage Regulator, or the AVR. Below the exciter is the generator. The inside is a rotor turned by the runner. The outside stationary part is the stator. This is made up of a set of 3 coils of copper wire called windings. On the rotor are a number of electromagnets powered by the DC current from the exciter. If these are switched off, the turbine will be able to spin without generating any electricity. The magnet's poles on the outside of the rotor create a separate rotating magnetic field for each magnet. The magnets are lined up so that adjacent poles always have opposite fields to each other: north, south, north, south. As the rotor spins within the stator, each pole's magnetic field acts on the stator's windings. Each time a pole makes one full revolution, one pulse of AC power is generated in the windings and transmitted towards the grid by conductors attached to the stator. Because the stator is connected to the grid, it's important that the pulses are in time with the grid frequency. When the pulses are in time with the grid frequency, we say that the generator is synchronized. System conditions can push the stator's magnetic fields out of sync with the rotor. The difference between the movement of the stator's magnetic field and the rotor's is the torque angle. The rotor has many electromagnets on it, producing a consistent flow of power. The generator produces 3-phase power by using different conductors to carry the power generated along different parts of the stator, as shown here. This creates a 3-phase alternating current, which is represented by the sine wave.
Okay, so I hope it helped you clear the concepts. Any questions anyone is having?
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes, Rajat. Go ahead.
Sir, what kind of turbine do you use? Is this propeller or something else?
Turbines are usually 3 types for hydro generators: Francis, Kaplan,
Yes.
and Pelton turbines.
Pelton, yes, sir. So Pelton is for high head and...
Right, very right.
Sir,
So what do you use?
Yes, Rajat.
Sir, what kind of turbine they use?
Again, as you rightly said, so depending upon the value of the head and discharge, the appropriate type of turbine is used. So Pelton is usually for high
Yes.
head, and I think Francis is for the low head, right? And one is for the medium head.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So those
Francis
that-
for medium head. Francis is for medium.
Francis for medium and yes, sir.
Kaplan is for low head, right?
Kaplan is for low head, sir.
And that shown in the video was, sir, I think it was Francis turbine.
Okay.
Due to the sir spiral shape.
sir, in the given in the video, sir, where is the field exciter, sir?
Yeah, so as you saw, the exciter was on top of this machine, and this is connected to its controller known as the automatic voltage regulator. So after we do this one, we'll be looking at exciter also in more detail. So there is a control mechanism, AVR, automatic voltage regulator, which controls the power flow to the exciter system. And physically, it is located usually above your generator.
Sir, can you show in that video exactly where it is?
Okay. So let me play it again.
In this animation, we'll look at how on the outside of the rope, 3 coils of copper wire called an external controller called the auto. Expand this into its parts
So the
we can
turbine
see
is at
them
the bottom.
clearly.
Then this generator is in between, and on top of that is
At the
AC.
top is the exciter, which gets a small DC power supply from a cable attached to an external controller called the automatic voltage regulator, or the AVR. Below the exciter is the generator. The inside is a rotor.
So now it goes to the details of generator. So does that
Okay,
help,
sir.
Anvesh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
Anyone else having any questions?
सर अपथ्रस्ट क्यों होता है?
Yes, Nitish.
तो अपथ्रस्ट का रीजन क्या होता है?
Due to the centrifugal force of rotation, which is there due to the rotation of the turbine.
Oh,
Also, what is the role of AVR?
AVR is the automatic voltage regulator, and that controls the power supply to the exciter. Okay, and as you can recall, if you change the power flow, basically the current, because the voltage we will not play with the DC supply voltage, but IF, the field current, we can change. So if the field current changes, the flux generated changes, and accordingly the EMF generated in the machine changes. And if EMF generated inside the machine changes, the voltage at the terminals of the machine changes. So this AVR, that's why it's known as the automatic voltage regulator. So this particular loop, through controlling the settings of the AVR, you can adjust how much will be the terminal voltage output of your machine. And exciter we will be doing in detail also after this.
Okay.
I mean, after this segment of hydro generators, we'll be doing power factor improvement maybe, or maybe power factor we can have later. So after this one, we will do exciter and governor, and then we'll go to power factor.
Okay, sir.
Okay, anyone else? Any question? Okay,
Sir,
so
the torque angle.
torque angle we discussed. You remember the delta, that
Yes, sir.
phasor diagram we made. So V
Yes,
phi
sir.
and EA. So the angle between V phi and EA, that was the torque angle or the internal angle.
That should be in 20 to 30 degrees. Sir.
Right.
Okay, sir.
And anyone else? Any other question? Or any inputs in this? Okay, so let's move ahead and with our. So now we'll look at these components, at least the most critical components in somewhat more detail. So first, let's start with the stator, which is housed here in the stator frame when across system. Just before we go ahead, I can maybe show one more animation of this so that the stator part is actually more visible here. So
Sir, mechanical stress is generated due to that centrifugal force, sir.
yeah, right.
Okay, sir.
And also there is this, the poles are bolted. I mean, when we look at the rotor in more detail, you'll see the rotor poles are bolted. You know, it's not like part of the same thing. It's bolted separately. So obviously there is a joint there, so stresses will be developed.
Okay, sir.
Regarding this turbine, uses Francis and Kaplan have the wicket gates, right? And this Pelton has those needles for impinging the flow of water, right?
Yes, sir, you're right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, yes, relative.
So
Actually,
someone
the
said
turbine that is
about
shown
that
in
turbine
case.
was that, yeah, how did you identify whether it is Francis or Kaplan?
Sir, actually, it depends upon the flow. If it is flow is coming from the outward and the casing was in a spiral shape, na? So it is the classification comes under this Francis turbine. And if the water,
So-
like the video shown in the figure just now that we have that you show just now, na? So it from that water was coming if water was coming from the top and the propeller is rotating, then it is a kind of Kaplan turbine.
Okay. Because I usually identify with the wicket gate or the needle type arrangement, but yeah, that is a good point actually what you said. Okay, Harshvardhan, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sir. Actually, Udit has covered everything. I was trying to saying if the dome shape and the spiral shape, then we can classify on the base of that, and if we have the speedometer, then we can check out the speed, then the RPM, then we can say
That is also
yes, sir.
okay. Okay, so we'll move ahead and look at the stator in somewhat more detail. So the generator stator consists of stator foundation support members, these support members here, a stator frame, so these are the frame members, and the stator core which is there, and the stator windings which are embedded in the core. So the foundation members, we have discussed this, I think, structural frame, yeah, so the foundation members are embedded in the concrete structure at the base, or this thing providing structural support. Stator frame provides the support for the stator core and other machine components. Stator core consists of thin sheet steel laminations stacked on top of one another. So again, that same as we discussed earlier for rotor also is that same, that laminar type construction is used. So you have thin sheet steel lamination stacked on top of the one on top of the other. And again, the reason is same. You want to minimize the eddy current losses, the iron core losses. Then the stator core is secured to the stator frame structural members to avoid mechanical vibrations during generator operation. The stator windings are inserted into the stator core slots. So the stator core, the inner diameter facing the rotor, this will have slots where the winding will be placed. And finally, the winding, because you need to collect the current which is generated in those windings. So there is something known as the collector ring, which is also known as the ring bus, which is located at the top of the stator core. So on top of that, there will be this ring bus, which will collect the current which is generated in the windings and across the three windings of the three phases, and then that will go feed the power to the external circuit. So the collector rings are routed along the outside periphery of the generator and are used to connect parallel circuits of a given phase together and to act as the natural element of the winding. So that is also obvious. Let's say, I mean, because you'll see most of the practical hydro generating units will have, one particular power plant will have different units. So 3 or 4 units which are there. So the A phase of each can be connected in parallel, B phase or C phase like that in parallel, because when you connect in parallel, the voltage remains same, but the current gets added up for going in the external circuit. So the windings may consist of multi-turn coils or single-turn bar windings depending upon the size of the generator. So it can be a multi-turn coil or a single-turn bar winding. So for the smaller generators, single-turn bar windings can be used, but for larger generators, you can have multi-turn coils. So that is the stator. Then you have the rotor. And as we have already discussed, that this is a salient pole type rotor. Again, a more detailed diagram is given here. So this is just the rotor here, the cross-sectional view again. And there is some nomenclature given in detail. So this, the first part which is just surrounding the shaft, known as the rotor hub. Then these arms of the rotor which are going out, so to say, arm type structure. This is number 2. This is the also known as the rotor spider. And then finally there is the rotor rim at the end, this number 3, on which the poles are mounted. So, and then 4 is obviously these rotor poles shown in black color here. Then this section, if you look at this AA section, this one, where the rotor pole gets bolted to the rotor rim, that has been enlarged and shown here. So in this one, if you see, there are different things more you can see. So number 5 is the rotor field windings. So as we discussed earlier also, now the pole face is like this. The pole is facing in the horizontal direction. So the winding will be enveloping it in the vertical plane. Okay, so this is number 5, cross section of the winding. So winding will envelop in the vertical plane, and as we understand by right hand rule, according to the direction of the current, either the field will be going out, which is the north pole, or reverse direction, field going in, that is the south pole. And as we discussed, alternate will be north and south. So that is number 5. Then number 6 are known as the rotor damper windings. These are, this is basically a secondary winding which is placed in these small slots along the face of the pole. And the idea for this is to produce damping to cut down on the oscillations in the machine. So because when this thing rotates, and especially if there is a speed change or something, there will be oscillations always, which will cause the transients in your voltage and current waveforms, which is not desirable in the power system. So to cut down on those mechanical oscillations, we place something known as the damper windings, and they damp the oscillations. And then this is the bolting. So the mechanical stress which was shown in the second voice video, that was, so the rotor pole is bolted to the rotor rim through this type of T-head rotor pole connections, what are known as. And this is where the stresses were shown to be developing in the video. Okay, so this is the cross section of the rotor and the different components here. Then few things, or the rotor also, the rotor hub is attached directly to the generator shaft, as we saw this generator shaft. The next part encasing it is the rotor hub. The purpose of the rotor hub is to mount and fasten the rotor spider. So this rotor hub is to which the rotor spider is fastened. This number 2. The rotor spider consists of several mechanical arms that radiate outward from the rotor hub. A continuous rotor rim is connected to the outside end of each rotor spider arm. So this is the rotor rim here, connected to the outside, outer periphery of the rotor spider. In physically large generators, this rim consists of individual steel sheets stacked and bolted together to provide a continuous outside rotor perimeter to which the rotor poles are fastened. So as we discussed, again, that same laminated structure, steel sheets stacked together and bolted together to cut down on the eddy current losses. In smaller generators, the rotor rim is made of a solid forged steel ring, not really practical for any practical power system, but yeah, maybe for very small generators this might be possible, but for all practical purposes this is not really used. It's always the laminated steel sheets which are stacked together. In small low-speed machines, the rotor poles are bolted directly to the rim. In larger machines with high or medium speeds, the rotor poles are connected using a dovetail or T-head connection. So this, what is shown here, this type of T-head type connection. So this is going like a T and being fastened there. So this type is used for more medium or larger machines. The field windings are wrapped around the outside of each rotor pole and connected to each other to form alternate north and south poles around the periphery of the rotor. So this is the field windings around the rotor poles. The damper windings consist of copper bars that extend the length of the rotor pole face. The damper windings are used to dampen or restrict generator oscillations during steady state operation. So you don't want to have any oscillations due to maybe fluctuation in the water flow or turbine rotating speed. So to cut down on those oscillations, you have these damper windings. The damper copper bars on each rotor pole are connected to each other on most hydroelectric generators, damper winding also are connected from pole to pole. So usually these damper windings will also be connected across the poles so as to have more effective damping control. So this is about the rotor. Any questions anyone is having? Cover one, this small one shaft. So this is small generator shaft is bolted directly to the turbine shaft and conveys the mechanical power from turbine to the generator rotor. The generator is designed with the shaft as short as possible in order to reduce vibrations and minimize cost. So that is pretty obvious. So we'll stop here maybe, and yeah. So next class we'll go ahead from here. Any questions? Anyone is having?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, so
No,
we'll stop 2 minutes early only, and next class Monday will be the tutorial. So I hope everyone will submit your assignments before that. Latest is before that tutorial class. If someone fails to do so, they will be penalized accordingly. Okay, so please take
Sir,
care.
we will skip that fourth last part. We will skip.
No, don't skip. I will update that tutorial today. So
Okay.
meanwhile, you solve the other questions. I
Okay.
will update that.
I submitted, sir.
Yes, I have also submitted.
Sir, actually, I have assumed the frequency is 50 hertz as
Okay.
per the India. Yes, sir, and then solve the question.
That's also good. That's also
But
good.
sir, pole is still not given.
Sir, I have assumed pole also.
Sir, I have skipped that.
Okay, no problem. I'll update it. Those who have assumed something and solved it, that's okay, and they've submitted, that's good. And those who have not still solved, I'll be updating this right after the class, and so you can refer to the updated tutorial for referring the number of poles and frequency.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, I have skipped that and already submitted, so I have to submit again, or
Just solve that part and submit. If possible, solve that and integrate it as one PDF. Otherwise, it will be 2 different files. One might get missed out. So the previous one and this one integrate together as one file, one PDF file, and send as one PDF.
okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So we'll stop here.
Thank you, sir.